Hello everyone and welcome back to the Kohi game engine series. Today's video is going to be a little bit different from the rest of the series. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to take a little bit of time and address some issues that have come up in the system. So if you follow along on the project on the GitHub repo, you may or may not have seen this issues list that's sort of been stacking up for a while. And these are all various things that have come up over time that really need to be fixed within the system. So what I'm going to do is sort of cherry pick some of the issues out of here and fix them in this video just to knock out some sort of annoying issues along the way. So one of the things that prompted this is actually this window resize thing that's come up once or twice in conversation. I keep noticing it every once in a while. But I kept forgetting to actually note it down to actually fix it. So somebody was kind enough to write up a report. So with that, if you guys find something that is an actual bug in the system where there's some incorrect code or maybe there's something that doesn't work correctly in your setup, if you could just create a bug report here, that's a way that will pretty much guarantee that I actually get to see it. So anyway, what I'm going to do is go through a collection of these for right now, and we'll kind of go from there. So I'm not thinking I'm going to make it through this entire list, but I do want to go ahead and knock out some of these. So the first one I'm going to do is actually this window resize one because it's actually been around for a while. It's not been reported until recently, but it has actually been around for a while. So this one was reported by Bricklow, and he said he just finished implementing the code from video 21. When he tries to resize the window, it's super laggy. And it takes a while to recreate all the necessary stuff for the rendering, as I assume was what he meant. So he's actually doing this on Linux, so I'm going to go ahead and reproduce this on Linux real quick, but let's take a look at the screenshot or the video that he's produced here. Incidentally, this kind of thing is super helpful when you guys are trying to write up a bug. Any screenshots or code snippets or anything like that that you can provide me as to what the actual issue is helps a lot. So we'll take a look here at his video, and we can see him resizing it there, and it's sort of just, it's laggy. It looks like it's throwing some errors here. I'm guessing that has to do with all the resource creation. So this was something that I sort of half-tackled a while back, but it doesn't look like I got it fixed entirely. So what I'm going to do is switch over to the project here, and I'm going to take a look specifically at our resize method here. So I don't know why this isn't working tree. Let me actually get rid of that. So basically what happens is whenever the window is resized, this winds up getting called. And our current logic is to say if we have a state pointer, we set the resizing flag to true. We go ahead and update the frame buffer width and height, and then set the frames since resize back to 0. So in other words, every time we have a resize operation, it should say, okay, we've just resized, reset the frame counter to 0. That frame counter is used within the render loop. So the first thing we do within that render loop is we say, are we resizing? If we are, the frame since resize is incremented. If that number goes over 30, then we go ahead and perform the actual resize. This is to keep us from constantly having to tear down and recreate swap chain resources, things of that nature. And I suspect that this is actually where the problem is. So the way that this should work is if we've passed 30 frames, then we go ahead and do this. If we've not passed 30 frames, then we will skip rendering the frame and try again next time. And basically what this will do is it will return true out of this. So it'll say the render was quote-unquote successful, but it won't actually allow us to start drawing anything, right? So it's just a return out early. So I suspect, again, this is probably where the issue is. So let me go ahead and do a clean and a build. And we'll go ahead and run this. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up here so that we can see the terminal down here. And I'm just going to resize this a little bit. And we see the same thing that he was seeing. So it's very, very slow. And we can see that there are actually some issues, some errors being thrown here. So let's close that. And we will scroll up a little bit. And it looks like we have some validation errors. So looks like our frame buffer create info. Attachment number 0, MIP level 0, has a width of 877, which is smaller than the corresponding frame buffer width, which is 957. So given that we're seeing discrepancies between the size here, and those things should be synchronized by the time that this all actually gets called, I have a suspicion that we are actually performing multiple resizes sort of at once, and this logic here is actually broken. So I think despite us actually doing frame counts, I think what we have here is for some reason not working correctly. And I actually have a hunch as to why, but let's go ahead and investigate that. So what should be happening here is we should be waiting 30 frames to before actually performing the resize. So at 60 frames a second, which is what we are running on this machine, that should be about half a second. So let's go ahead and crank this up to a much higher number, just temporarily. And that should give us about 2 seconds, right? It should slow us down about 2 seconds if we're running at about 60 frames per second. So in other words, 120 frames should have to pass before this logic is actually allowed to run. So let's go ahead and build that and run. And we will go ahead and try to resize. And it doesn't actually look like it's affected anything. It looks like it's still kind of resizing a lot here. So let me actually put a breakpoint right here in our logic to see when this gets invoked, to see how quickly that should happen. And again, it should happen about 2 seconds into the resize. And it was immediate, pretty much. Let's see, our frames since resize is 120. But I know for a fact that that didn't take 120 frames worth of time at 60 frames a second. So since that was pretty much instant, I think I actually know exactly what's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the application. So I think what is actually happening here is ordinarily for our draw frame, we have all this logic that runs to begin the frame, to actually perform the rendering of each view, and then go ahead and end the frame. And typically that takes a certain amount of time to actually perform all that logic on the GPU. And if we are actually in a situation where we're bound to 60 frames a second, which in our particular case on this workstation we are, that should take about 16 milliseconds. And so I think what's happening here is because we're not actually hitting this logic and going through and starting and ending, we are basically just returning instantly here. And so what is happening is our draw frame is just being called continuously, really, really rapidly. And we are incrementing those frames and immediately hitting this counter. And so there are a couple ways that we could attempt to fix this. One way would be to just begin and end the frame regardless and just not do anything in between. I don't think that's really necessary. I think we could actually get away with something a little bit simpler than to just do that. So I think what I'm going to do is instead of doing all this, and again, if this doesn't wind up working out, I can always come back and change this. But I think what I'm going to wind up doing is I think I'm going to basically right before I return true, I think I'm going to go ahead and put a sleep timer in here. And this is one of those scenarios where it kind of makes sense to do this. It'll be running on the main thread. And so we're basically going to sleep for 16 milliseconds, which would be about a frame at 60 frames per second. So if you recall, our sleep method is actually in our platform.h. So we're going to need to go ahead and add that. We'll go here and we'll include that platform. platform.h. And right here, we are going to say platform sleep. And it takes in milliseconds as an argument, so we're going to use 16. And we're going to put a note here to wait, simulate a frame being drawn at 60 FPS. Okay. And that, I believe, is actually going to fix this bug. So let me go ahead and build and run. And this actually makes sense because this is on our boot up. We actually haven't had a resize yet, so that's the first initial resize. So let's continue. Get that back. And now, if we resize the window, it should take 2 seconds from the last resize that happened to actually regenerate everything here. So let's go ahead and just drag this around a little bit. And we could see if I pause for like half a second or so, it seems fine. But this is no longer laggy. It no longer takes a long time to happen. There are some graphical artifacts that happen here, but I'm not really worried about those because that really just goes away when we go ahead and release. So we can see here, we're no longer trying to regenerate those resources. We're no longer calling the back end as long as we continuously move. And I'm going to go ahead and stop now. And after 2 seconds, we see that we have reached our counter. So it appears our new logic has worked. Let's go ahead and remove that breakpoint and continue the application. And it seems to have worked. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag this out a little bit more. 2 seconds later, it comes back. And then let's go ahead and make this smaller. And 2 seconds later, it comes back. So obviously 2 seconds is too long, right? We don't necessarily need that much time. So what I'm actually going to do is I think our original 30 here should be sufficient. That should be about half a second. And we can tweak this if we want. Maybe I'll make this a renderer setting. But I think 30 should be sufficient. So let's go ahead and run this again. Okay, and now we see, if I stop, about half a second later, we are good to go. So, it appears that that bug is fixed. Cool. So we can go ahead and knock that one off the list. And what I'm going to do, for the sake of the video here and tracking this, is I'm actually going to kind of show you guys how I would generally put in these fixes. So usually for something like this, the correct thing to do would be to create a branch. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, my current branch, I can check by doing git status. And we see here that this is the only file that we've modified and that we are on the main branch. So let's do git checkout branch, and I'm going to call this, actually it should be git checkout -b, sorry. And I'm going to call this bugfix /80, which is the ticket number. And that's just going to be the name of my branch there. And so we'll say git add dot, which adds anything that is sort of pending. So if I do another git status here, we see that that has been modified, but it's now green because it is staged. So we stage that, and I'll say git commit dot -m for message, and I'll say resolves number, I think it was 80. Okay, and then I'll do git push u origin bug fix /80. And obviously you guys won't be able to do this part because you're not able to actually push branches to my repo, but this is how you guys would do it if you forked the repo and created a branch that way. So now that I've done this, I'm going to go ahead and click that to, why are you opening in Firefox? I don't want you to do that. Yeah, I don't know what's done that. And of course that's a 404 because I'm not logged in on Firefox. So let me just create a new bug fix pull request here. And we see that our changes are here. So this is the extent of our changes. Thankfully, this one is pretty simple. So let's go ahead and create that. We're going to pull that into main. So we'll create the pull request. All right. And we'll go ahead and merge that pull request because it's just me. And there we are. So now that fix is available in main, and I can actually come down here and I should refresh this. And since I used the number, I believe it should show up. Apparently not. So, oh, I pushed this to my private repo. Whoopsie. So that's my staging repo, which is really fun. Normally you guys would not be able to see this one, so that's pretty funny that I made that mistake actually. But in case you're wondering how I manage this stuff, I actually have a private repo that I use. And then I typically will go ahead and push this to that, and then as I record the videos, and then I will actually change from that to what I call live, which is just a separate remote that I have. And that is where you guys actually see it in the public repo. So I'll need to do this again. Let me copy this. Go back here to this, and let me go to the right repo. And I'll create this again. All right. And since it's me, I don't require a review, so I can squash and merge this. Okay. And now if I go here, we should see a reference. Here we go. That's what I was looking for. So right here, we say this resolves number 80, and now I can go ahead and actually it automatically picked up. Since I used the resolve keyword, it automatically picked it up and closed it. So I forgot that it actually did that. So this particular bug is now solved. So I'm not going to walk through this entire process for all of the bug fixes, but I wanted to give you guys sort of a bird's eye view, if you will, on how some of this bug fix stuff actually works, and how you might manage this in a repository of your own when you actually start working on one. So that is that one. If we refresh our list here, we will now see that that is gone. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to tackle several more of these at once. And then sort of combine them all into one PR. That's not generally something you would want to do, but it's going to take entirely too long for me to split all these out into separate videos, and I don't really want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably pick a couple more that are sort of higher priority bugs to go ahead and fix. So there was one in here. Let's see. I think it was number, let's see, which one was it? It had to do with file I/O. Which one was it? This one, I think it was. Yeah, 47. Okay, so technically this is a Windows bug. And basically this particular bug, I'm not going to be able to actually test here but I'm going to go ahead and fix it anyways because I know exactly what the fix should be. So basically, there's a bug in file system exists on Windows that was causing this to sort of abort out. And I may have actually already fixed this, but I'm going to take a look anyways. So platform, Windows, platform. Actually, it might be, I think it's actually file system. Is it file system? File system exists. Oh, okay. I did already fix this one. So this is an example of one that actually should have already been closed. But basically, the issue was that this right here is not what was there. So basically, what was here for this was that right there. It was missing the check against the 0, which is actually the opposite of what we want. So if you guys are running into a problem with that, I guess I fixed this last month and just forgot that I fixed it. But let's go ahead and kill that bug as well. Previously fixed. Okay. So that's another one. All right, what's the next one we want to tackle? I guess we could go for pre-multiply tangent handedness. This is technically an enhancement, but let's see. The handedness that is currently placed in the W component of the tangent could instead be pre-multiplied against the final computed tangent. Tangent can then be converted to a 3-component vector, and the extra calculation in the fragment shader could be removed. So, is that something? Yeah, I guess we could tackle this one. This is a little bit more work than I was initially thinking it would be, but let's see. I think that was in geometry utils. So this handedness right here is what we're saying could be pre-multiplied. So basically what we're doing is we're taking the handedness here and putting it into the W component of our tangent. And then let me close some of these other ones. And then in the actual shader, which is going to be under assets, shaders, material shader, I think it was, or was it the other? Was it the vertex shader? Right here. So we're actually taking that W and multiplying it here. And so what we could do is we could actually save this whole calculation from having to be made right here. And we wouldn't actually have to pass this in at all. I don't think the vertex shader does anything with it. Let me double check. In tangent W, this is performing normalize on that. But if that is, so this just gets passed over to the fragment shader, and then it gets multiplied back in after we do the cross product here. So I wonder if I think in theory, if we went ahead and got rid of that, we get rid of that there. The NDTO, we'll go ahead and change the tangent to a vector 3. And then, let's see, where all is the tangent used? So tangent, XYZ, tangent. So that's the local tangents. Okay. So we could probably remove all this XYZ business as well. Let's make sure this works first. So I'll take that out there. And I will remove this from there, change that to a vector 3, get rid of this, and just use normalize on that. In tangent XYZ. So that's going to be here. So we'll change that to a vector 3. Okay. And I think that's all the changes that need to be made in the shader. The material shader config is going to need a change as well, because that is taking in a vector 4 for the tangent. So let's go ahead and change that to a vector 3. And I don't think any of these others use, oh, they do. The skybox uses it. So the skybox is also going to be, why does the skybox actually use it? I don't think the skybox actually does use it. But it's in the vertex layout, so I'll make sure to change that there as well, so that hopefully doesn't become foobar. Okay, so that's the shaders. And in the, what was that, geometry utils, I believe? Right here. So what we'll do is we'll have the handedness, and then we'll say vector, actually we need to change this first because that's a vector 4. So let's go ahead and change this to be a vector 3, vertex 3D. We may have to put padding at the end of that anyways, but we'll see. Okay, so we'll go ahead and call this a vector 3, and we'll do vec3 multiply scalar, and we'll take the tangent and multiply the handedness. And we need to also change our vector 3D equal, because that's obviously not going to be a vector 4 anymore. That needs to be a vector 3 compare. And I'm going to go ahead and clean and rebuild. And I'm also going to run the post build. And let's go ahead and run. I don't think I've missed anything, but I might have. Okay, so that looks right. Let's go ahead and load up our scene. And that's definitely not right. What has happened here? Segmentation fault. Bytes read 2306. Our data size is 4. Huh, that's interesting. Oh, I think I know what it is. Okay. So we actually need to go into our assets because we actually have changed the way that the geometry is actually held. We actually need to remove these KSM files because those are no longer going to be valid. So, you know what, let me just open this up in Dolphin here. Models, so we need to remove those and regenerate them. I should probably put some sort of check in there. Okay, so that car model looks like it loaded correctly. It's doing the Sponza now. Takes a minute because Sponza is absolutely huge. Okay, so it looks like it's regenerated all of that. And it looks like our lighting looks pretty good. let's take a different look here at our lighting, our normals. Everything here looks fairly correct, so I think we're actually in pretty good shape. Okay, so it looks like we have gone ahead and implemented that fix. Everything here looks pretty good. So just for sanity's sake, I'm just going to run it again now that we have those assets regenerated. And let's go ahead and load. And we are good to go. So yeah, looks like that fix is good. Okay. So there were a couple things in here in the shaders that I wanted to remove some XYZ type stuff. So right here, we're taking the tangent XYZ because we were, that was used to be a vector 4, now it's a vector 3, so we don't need to do that anymore. We can remove that in both of these spots. Remove this comment. I think that is it for that one. The vertex shader, did it have any? Let's see, in tangent. No, it did not. Okay, so let's go ahead and post build just to make sure that we didn't break the shader. And load. Okay, so it looks like we're good. All right, so that one is good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and actually create a new branch here. And I'm just going to call this, call it bug fix. Call it bug fix miscellaneous for now. And I'm going to go ahead and get a git status on that. And we have a lot of things that have changed here. So let's just go ahead and take a look at those changes, make sure that we didn't leave anything in here like a useless comment or something. Okay. So these are just the shader configs. Right, and then let's see. That's it for that one. Yeah, so it's actually pretty straightforward stuff. Okay, so we have that. So I'm going to say git add all of it. We do a git status. We've got that. So I'll say git commit. Oops. And I'll say resolves number, and what was the number of this? 43. Oops. Number 43. Okay. All right. Well, it counts this entire I wonder why it only wrote out that this was rewritten, not the other one. I don't know, whatever. Okay, so that one is fixed. So let's go ahead and keep going. So we've got that one. What next? Redundant parameters and swap chain present. Didn't I already see this up here somewhere? No. Okay. So I guess let's take a look at this one. Oh, okay. Somebody reported that this is taking in the graphics queue and the graphics queue is not used. That is true. So let's take a look at, let's actually close some of these other things here. Take a look at Vulkan swap chain. Was that present? Yeah, present. So what do we have here? We have graphics queue, and graphics queue indeed is not being used. Present queue is being used, but not graphics queue. So I think it is safe to go ahead and remove this. So I'm going to pull up the swap chain H file and remove it there first. So we have our present. In fact, I had a to-do in there to remove the graphics queue, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and then the graphics queue is removed from there, which means the back end is likely also going to need to change to support that right here, so we can get rid of the graphics queue from that call. And I believe that's it. So let's just clean rebuild. Run. Okay, and I'm just going to load just to make sure. Yeah, and we're good to go. So that is that one. That is number 39. So again, I will do git status, git add, git commit. I keep doing that. I keep hitting enter instead of the quote. Can't type today, apparently. Resolves number, that was 39, right? 39. Okay. So now we have that one. So let's see what else. Okay, so this is a pretty Windows-specific bug. I'm not going to do that one because I've taken a look at that one and I don't really have a workaround for that just yet. Bindless texture support, that's an enhancement and not a small one at that, so I'm going to skip that one for now. We have a Win32 platform console write error. That's a bug. That's on Windows. I won't be able to test that right now because I'm on Linux, so I'm going to skip that one as well. We just did that one. We've done that one. Add support for 1, 2, or 3 channel textures. That's not something I want to. That's not really something I want to tackle right now because it's a little bit complicated because of the way that GPUs handle textures in general. Investigate using clock monotonic raw instead of clock monotonic. Let's take a look at this one. In fact, did I already? Somebody suggested this in the comments. They suggested to look into using clock monotonic raw instead of clock monotonic since it is not affected by NTP or edge time. So let's ask the Google machine because it's been a while since I've looked at this. Let's see. So clock monotonic never experiences discontinuities due to NTP time adjustments, but does change frequency as NTP learns what error exists between local oscillator and upstream servers. Clock monotonic raw is simply the yeah, so this may not be the clearest resource to use because people are actually saying that this might be inconsistent. Let's see. Let's see if we can find a different source on this. Maybe the man page here will tell us what we need to know. Okay, so this is consistent with what the comment said. So this provides access to raw hardware-based time that is not subject to... Okay, so this is... Okay, so that's what I was looking for, is hardware-based... Okay, so... I think literally we can just take anything that's using clock monotonic, which I think is only in one spot anyway, and change it to clock monotonic raw. So platform, not Vulkan platform, Linux, platform Linux. I think this is the only place that that's actually used, so I actually believe I can just do raw. And I think we'll be okay. Okay, so that was actually a fairly quick change. So I'll have to do a little bit more digging on that, but it does seem like this is the way to go. So that's what I'm going to stick with. So that's pretty quick. This was issue number 45, so okay. So let's keep looking. So we've got that one. Refactor D-array is something I want to do. However, that's probably going to be a video on its own. Event system does not take callback into account. This, I think, was also another one that was reported by somebody. Event register does not look at the callback when checking for uniqueness. This should be taken into account as it is in event unregister. So event.c, event register. Let's see event unregister first, actually. So if listener and callback. So it does check here to see if they're the same before it actually pops it out. And then here, as we're looping through, we just check the listener, but not the callback. I'm not sure why we would have done that. I think it's just an oversight. So I think this is literally just going to be a check here to say the registered subcode.events sub-I callback equals on event. I think that's all that we should need to do. Right. So yeah, now it takes into account the listener as well as the callback when looking for uniqueness. Okay, so in theory, what we should probably do is tackle this to do as well. So I'm actually going to go in here to include the core logger and kwarn. Event has already been registered with the code. Let's see, that's just an integer, so let's say the code that and the callback of, and then we'll just use a pointer here and we'll say code on event. And we can get rid of this just to make it a little bit more explicit as to what's actually happening. Should not have broken anything, but let's go ahead and run. All right, so what I'm going to do is actually go into the application. And let's see, event register. I'm actually just going to copy this definition. To do remove me. Okay. So in theory, by doing this, since it's already done here, by doing it again here, it should trigger that warning. And actually, I'm just going to set a breakpoint here so that we don't go through the entire boot up. And yep, so event has already been registered with the code 16 and callback of that. However, if we remove this and move the breakpoint down to here, where we are registering the same code, but or different codes for the same callback, that should work. Right, no warning. And by extension, I'm going to add another temporary one here for, let's see, so we've tried the same one, the same callback. Let's try the same code but with a different callback, which obviously is not going to be correct, but you know, we just want to check that the uniqueness checks all work. And it didn't throw an issue there. So it looks like our uniqueness checks are all good to go. So we've got that. All right, so get status. Commit resolves number, what was this? 51. 51? Yeah, 51. Okay. So that's that one. Input system bugs. Linux platform input fixes. This is a Linux specific one. So before I jump into this, actually, let's see. We're running at about 47 minutes. Okay, I'll fix a couple more. So let's see what these keyboard input fixes are. Let's see. Looks like somebody already put a commit out for this, but let's see. So this is another one that somebody brought up on YouTube. Solve the key repeating without needing to change it globally on the server by using the XKB extension. XKB per client flag detectable auto repeat flag on. Okay. Also, I found the reason for this being done in X11 event. Every event has an 8-bit code. Most significant bit in the code itself is right, clearing the top bit. Right, okay. Arguably anding. Oh, okay, so he's just explaining why that does what it does. Okay. You may also want to free the replies you get when retrieving the WM protocols and WM delete window atoms. Okay. Finally, add a static lookup table of codes to keys and eliminate the switch in the translate function. Okay. So this one, let me look. So basically, this is actually going to fix a couple things. So one of the things that we have right here is this translate key code method, which is like this giant switch, which I'm not really a fan of. But basically, it takes in all these different key codes and converts them to to our key codes that we have, our Kohi key codes. And because these are so very widely different, this can actually make a big difference depending on how we actually... let me think about this for a second. So if we want a static lookup table, that would essentially mean that we would create a lookup table for each platform where the key itself is the lookup? No. Where the platform specific key is the lookup, and then it returns this value. So it's essentially creating a data structure where we have the lookup value of all of these inserted into it. So this is the lookup value, and then it would return this, so that we don't have to run through all this logic every single time. Which is an interesting idea. It's a good idea, actually. I don't really think I want to do that on camera, though, so I think I'm going to skip this one for now, because it's not really a huge issue right now either. So I'm going to pass on that one for right now. Input system bugs. Let's see what this is, because this is actually reported as being a bug. So mouse state.buttons is a U8 instead of a B8. Yeah, okay, that is an issue. Input process mouse wheel fires an event using a U8 instead of an I8. You will be able to tell the direction without it being unsigned. Oh, that is a valid point. So mouse state.buttons. So this is going to be in, let's see, input.h, I think. So will that say mouse state.buttons? Oh, that's going to be in the C file. Input.c. Let's see. So I think this is what it's talking about. It's a U8 instead of a B8. Right. Yeah, so that should be changed to a B8. So it's a Boolean because there's only one state. It's either up or down. And actually, what all references this? Yeah, and this is checking against Booleans anyway, so yeah, it's a minor issue, but one that's good to be fixed. Okay. So that's that one. Input process mouse wheel fires an event using a U8 instead of an I8. So mouse wheel. So yeah, we have an I8Z delta. Oh, right. Okay. Yep, there it is. That should be an I8. Okay. And then is there anything listening to this? No. It's just firing the event. Okay. So let's go ahead and actually change the comment on this because the comment is wrong too. That should be an I8. Okay. All right. So that's easy enough fix. So that is for 52. So get status, just those two files. So get add, get commit. Resolves number 52. Yeah. Okay. Next. So it was this one here. Small memory leak when searching for device requirements. So memory leak seems like something we should definitely fix. Reported by YouTube comments. Let's see. Vulkan device.c around 322. Well, Vulkan device C. .322. This was reported a while ago, so that may not be true anymore. Let's see, requirements, device extension name, 3 arrays created, but not destroyed. Okay, device. Oh, apparently spelled that wrong. Okay, so we create this, push to it. Do the device extensions. Requirements. Physical device meets requirements. So let's see, the first. Physical device requirements. Okay, so just copy this. So we check that. And this is for each device. Okay, we don't have any returns out of here, I don't believe. Nope, we don't. So right after this, requirements. Requirements are created within this scope. So yeah, by the time we get to the end of this block here, we should be done with it. So array destroy requirements device extension names. All right, let's just run that real quick. I don't know why there's a breakpoint there, but okay. Seems to have worked. All right. All right, so we've got that fixed. Instead of just adding this though, that whole block should be moved outside the loop. And the DRA finally destroyed once the loop completes before the check to see if a device was selected. Whole block should be moved outside the loop. Oh, right, because why are we creating... That's a really good point. That's a really good point, actually. Okay, so basically what I was saying there is this whole device requirements bit should be moved outside the loop up here, because we're actually, for every physical device, we're actually recreating it, which is kind of dumb. So I'm going to take this all the way to here, and I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to put it setup requirements. Put it there instead. And then that can run through the loop. I'll say iterate physical devices to find one that fits the bill. Okay. And then our code should just evaluate each device as would make sense. And then we can go ahead and move this down here outside that block. Clean up requirements. Okay, so let's see what else. So that should just be, yeah. Is there anything else on here that needs to be cleaned up? I don't think there is. I think that's the only array. Yep, okay. All right, so that should be good. Let's just run this as a sanity check. Okay. Works. All right, let's just flip back to this. So we've done that. Also includes required validation layer names and available layers in Vulkan backend C around line 42. So there is another place. We're apparently leaking memory. Let's see. So we have our required validation names. So we're creating this here. We're only doing this in debug. So we add this, create instance, and then if debug. Do we have, that's the 9th instance of it there. So basically, after our create info, we should be good to go ahead and clean that up, actually, after our create instance, actually. So clean up. We'll say darray destroy required validation layer names. Okay, and then this is also saying available layers is also like the same thing. So we have darray reserve right here. Available layers here. Okay, so this one's a little bit tricky because it does have a return here. Actually, did the other section of code have a return? Actually, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it, because if we return false out of the initialize, we're shutting down the application anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that one. So this is available layers. This is going to be the same thing. Because this is in initialize, if we actually return false here, technically we'd be leaking the memory, but since we're shutting down, I don't really care. It's not really worth it. I am going to go ahead and clean up down here though. So let's see, available layers. So all we're doing here is just searching if the available layers are within the list of required layers. So once we get here, we can actually clean that up. So we can say darray destroy and available layers. Clean up. All right, let's go ahead and I'm just gonna clean and rebuild. And looks like we're good to go. Cool. So that's another one. I think that's everything here. So this is number 54. Yeah. Okay. And let's see, how are we doing on time here? So we're about an hour. I will pick one more, maybe, and call it a day. Let's see. Vulkan command buffer is excessively zeroing memory and size is incorrect in one location. That seems like a good candidate of something that should be fixed. So in create command buffers in Vulkan backend C, there are calls to zero out the memory in multiple places. In addition, there is a call to zero the memory with Vulkan command buffer allocate, and the size there is wrong. Remove the extra calls and clear the memory only once. What is this talking about? Because I don't. Vulkan command buffer allocate. And the size there is wrong. Oh, I see what we did. Yeah. All right, so we're zeroing out the memory of out command buffer, but then we're using the size of out command buffer, which is actually the size of a pointer. So yeah, that actually is wrong. It should be Vulkan command buffer is the size of. Okay. So this is saying there are calls to zero out the memory in multiple places. I wish I had actually written down what places those were, but okay. Let's take a look at everywhere this is actually being called in this file. Once. Okay. I must have removed them at some point then. But this was still an issue, so I'm going to consider that one fixed. So this is number 58. Yeah, I'll get commit. Resolves number 58. Okay. And actually, I did see one other one that I kind of do want to fix as well. That should be relatively quick, I hope. Oh, I think this is a duplicate. Yep, it is. What's the one I just fixed? 58. Let's see. Yeah, this is 58. So this is actually a duplicate. Thank you for it is, however, a duplicate of 58, number 58. And will be fixed there instead. Okay. So technically this was a good find, but it's a duplicate of a bug that already exists, so I can actually kill this one too, which is freaking sweet. Okay, so yeah, I've already checked that one in. So there was one more here. Pointer to local variable and Vulkan backend.c. Let's see. So we have line 1564 in Vulkan backend C. Function is using a pointer to a locally declared descriptor buffer info, and later in the function scope for buffer info's oh, yeah, that sounds pretty bad. Okay. So Vulkan backend.c. What line was that? 1564. This was just 12 days ago, so it's probably accurate. 1564. Well, maybe. This one here, I assume, is the one that's being talked about. Buffer info. So it's locally declared here. Later in the function after the scope for it has ended. So what is using These are the only 5 places it's used after the scope for it has ended. I don't know that this is an issue anymore. He's saying it's on line 1564. Which would be here. So I'm wondering if maybe he was looking at an old version. Oh wait, no. I see what he's talking about right here. So UBO descriptor. Right. Okay, so this actually goes out of scope here. But then this UBO descriptor writes. Descriptor writes is used all the way down here. That's what he's talking about. Okay. I'm surprised that actually works and didn't just completely die in a sword. Okay, so basically what the problem here is, if it's not fully clear, is we are declaring this buffer info within this if block here, and we're using the address of it here in the UBO descriptor's p buffer info. And then of course we're copying that over to here, the descriptor writes, which is not actually used until we get all the way down here. So it would be long out of scope by this point. This is one of those things that's just baffling that it actually worked, quite frankly. All right, so I'm trying to think about the best way to go ahead and solve this. So we always have 2 of these. Descriptor counts. Well, I guess we only potentially have a buffer. Okay. I guess probably the way to do this then as much as I hate it, is probably a dynamic allocation. Because otherwise there's no clean way well, we're only going to have potentially 1 buffer. So if this needs update, this is all in the needs update block. So maybe I could just move it up, actually. Because it's really only 1 here. So actually, maybe that's the reason we're getting away with it too. So in theory, I could move this here. Actually, no, I don't want to move all of that. Just this. That might actually be what I need. Because it should still be in scope by the time we get down here. So actually, that's probably the way I'm going to do it. Let's just clean and build. Good call, Eearslya. I completely missed that one. But it seems that we are good to go. All right, so I'm considering that one fixed. That is number 78. Resolves number 78. Okay, so we've resolved all these other bugs plus the other one I pushed earlier. So it's not knocking out the entire list, but it's knocked out some pretty big ones. So I hope this kind of thing is useful to you guys. This kind of troubleshooting, debugging, that sort of thing. And that was the reason I decided to do this as a separate video versus just kind of slamming it into one of the other videos. And I figured it was time we sort of started looking into some of these things and investigating them a little bit. So there are some Windows ones I want to take care of. I may come back and do a separate video just for that, especially when around some of these console ones. And there was another one up here. I saw this linking error, so I'm not sure what the deal is there. But the Windows ones, like I said, if there's enough of them that stack up or something that's serious enough, I'll make a separate video on that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about these sort of troubleshooting scenarios. If you guys find this useful or not, and that kind of feedback always helps me determine what I do on the channel. So anyway, that is going to wrap it up for this particular video. So I hope you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing, because there's a lot more to come in this series and other series that I have on the channel as well. So anyway, thanks guys for watching. I'll see you next time.